Cool. Got it. All right, so alumni, current students, alumni. So we're going to essentially kind of pattern the same thing we did last time, which is I'm going to let each of our distinguished guests introduce themselves, say a little bit about what they do, and maybe a little bit about something that they took away from their time here at Oneonta that helped them in their journey to where they are now. And then hopefully we'll have time for some questions. So I'm gonna start, let's go with Donna, because if I start Neil off, we'll never get anybody else a chance. So, so Donna, why don't you start? And
Hi.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming.
So my name's Donna. I graduated from Oneonta in December of 2015. And I work at Hudson Scenic Studios under Neil Mazzella. And I have worked here pretty much since I graduated. I went on the Goodrich to Broadway tour a couple weeks after my graduation and toured at Hudson. When I was here, I spoke to both Neil and our production manager, Carrie, and told them that I was looking for work, and they happened to be looking for overhire at the time. So I called, they called and interviewed me 2 days later, and I've been working at Hudson ever since. Oneonta is really what propelled me here. I never would have thought to go the route of carpentry and building scenery. When I went to Oneonta, I was gonna be a set designer, but doing practicum at Oneonta taught me that I'm pretty good with my hands and I'm pretty good at building scenery. So that's sort of how I wound up going down this road and wound up at Hudson.
Cool, thank you. Elena, how about you?
Hi, my name is Alanna Maniscalco. I graduated from Oneonta in 2009. I am currently at Opera. I'm the prop supervisor here. And while I was at Oneonta, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. This was like the year before there was a props class. So while I was there, I took some practicum credits with Patrice, and well, the two that I did were I reupholstered a chair, and I made a fake dummy that moved around for Rosencrantz or Dead. So that kind of like, I've always been crafty and artistic, so kind of like, oh, this props thing is cool. And then I got an internship after I graduated, a props internship, and then I've always had a props position, you know, as an intern, apprentice, artisan, master. So kind of how it goes. And I've learned each time, each position, different people I've worked with, learned new skills based off of the master artisans that I've worked with. And that's how I learned a ton of what I know from working in the field. Yeah.
So funny story, Elena, that W made for Rosencrantz, we're throwing it down the stairs for Noises Off right now.
That's awesome. I'm glad it still survives. I'm glad it still has it on stage.
Your legacy lives on. All right, Dave, what you got?
Hi there. So I graduated Oneonta a long time ago. And I took the first semester of my senior year off, and I came down to New York. I checked out of Oneonta and I enrolled in a school called Empire State College. And that allowed me to continue getting credits while being still in the SUNY system. And I shot myself out to every off-Broadway theater in New York. And I hooked into a theater that was doing modern dance. Back then it was called Dance Theater Workshop. Now I believe it's called New York Live. And I got an internship there. Long story short, they allowed me to design something during my internship. I got a New York Times review. I came back to Oneonta, finished Oneonta. And in my last semester, I got a call from the theater saying they were looking to hire me as a full-time designer and technical director for that theater. So right out of Oneonta, I lucked into a design position in New York City, working in one of the top modern dance and avant-garde theater in New York City. I spent about 2.5 years there, and then I opened up my own business. And now I do a lot of television lighting right now. I design new venues, new performing arts centers, new TV studios. I do lighting for talk shows, rock and roll, just about anything that needs light. I do some production design, but not as much anymore. Oneonta was instrumental in allowing me to try things and make mistakes and do things that on stage that I couldn't do anywhere else, taking advantage of the fact that it was an educational school and not a professional, and people's finances weren't on the line. So besides the great mentors that were there, I mean, we had some great professors at the time and technical directors that really supported the student body and allowed us to do outside productions in small theaters around campus that the students did on their own. I don't know if the Alumni Hall Theater is still around, but we did a lot of little shows in there. We did shows downtown in the bars. And I hooked up with a group of other students that were all in the theater department. And we, to this day, are still about 25 strong who are still connected. And we're known for the snowflake. Oh, sorry about that. We're known for the snowflake Christmas party, as we call it. It's also a fundraiser. We raise money for the school. But of those 25 people, we're still supporting each other. We go to each other's shows. We work with each other. I did a show with the director, Kevin Olson, last year or 2 years ago. And we all support each other as best we can. So Oneonta was an incredible jumping off point for me, and being able to get into theater, getting into starting my own business. And I've had my company now for 30 some odd years.
Great, thanks. Okay, Neil.
Thank you. And Donna is one of our all-stars up here at Hudson. I finished my Oneonta degree in December of 1972 and went back to New York City. Grew up on Staten Island. I was a liberal arts literature major. I did not do any theater at Oneonta. I did one show, Annie, Get Your Gun. It was at the same time the Cambodian bombings were happening. So we would do a queue and then run out the door and join the bonfire when we shut the campus down. My years at Oneonta from 69 to 72 were filled with that kind of experience. So I was able to do everything that I was supposed to do. I went to Woodstock. I marched on Washington. I got tear gassed at the Pentagon, and I read a lot of plays. As a lit major, I kind of minored in dramatic literature. When I got back to Staten Island, I did what every kid on Staten Island does. You get on the Staten Island ferry, you open the New York Times, and you look for a want ad, and you go get a job. I got a job in an insurance company, and on my second day there, I said, I don't think I can do this. So I went up to the Bowery and started working off Broadway, and met a group that I joined, and we got from off to off Broadway. We were earning about $85 a week. We were working about 100 hours a week. We had certain theaters that we could bounce to. At that time, the Chelsea Theater Center, the Village Gate, Manhattan School of Music, and that's how we lived. After a couple of years of that, I decided this is what I wanted to do, so I went to graduate school. When I got out of graduate school, I went to the Metropolitan Opera House, worked in the shop there. In the meantime, I had done rock and roll lighting. I was Alice Cooper's follow spot operator for a brief time. I was also Lawrence Welk's follow spot operator, which was the easiest job I ever had. And I know none of you people know who Lawrence Welk is, right? Then in 1980, I started Hudson Scenic with a partner, October of 1980. I've been here 41 years. He left in 94. The company's 41 years old, and we're primarily a theater company doing Broadway, but we also do opera, we do television, we do theme parks, we do cruise ships. The ball that drops on New Year's Eve is ours. When the Pope came to Yankee Stadium, we were hired to not only do the scenery, but to manage the whole event, which we did. We turned Yankee Stadium into a cathedral in 48 hours and then back again. I called 400 of my closest friends to get them in there so we could do that. And we've done other big productions like the FIFA Congress down in the Bahamas. So it's been a very eclectic kind of 41 years, but basically theater centric.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and start some of the questions off. I'm going to start with those of you who are in hiring positions. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what kinds of applications or applicants really grab your attention? What kinds of things stand out to you when you're looking for people to bring on board? I think this is mostly probably Dave and Neil at this point.
You want to go first, Dave?
Sure. So Feldman Designs, we hire electricians, gaffers, drafting people, just about everything and anything per production. One of the things I also at Lighting Design International, or LDI it's called, is a convention here held yearly, typically in Las Vegas. I'm often on the review committee for MFA students coming out of college, and we review all their paperwork and drawings. And the number one issue that I have is spelling. And when I see a light plot and something's misspelled, or a shop order when something is misspelled, it just blows me up. First of all, with spell check, that shouldn't happen. Second of all, you're representing me and my company, so I don't want anybody, sending out paperwork that representing me looking poorly. So quality and looking at details is really important. One of the things we're running into now, in fact, I ran into this week, we're looking for some help, and people don't have programs to do work with. So CAD programs like Vectorworks or Photoshop or even SketchUp. I've talked to 3 different students, and all of even their educational licenses have expired. So I think it's important at the very end of your year, you renew that license. At least you get a year out of it. We're also looking for professionalism. Someone, again, representing our company who we can put in front of a client and not have to worry about saying something. And then, of course, skills are always, what you need. That's how you maintain a job and get called back and things like that. And you only get that with experience. So I think those are the things we're looking for now is availability, flexibility. And now with the internet, you don't even have to be in the same state or even the same country to work, especially if you're doing renderings and things for us. All yours, Neil.
Thank you. With the pandemic, we learned how to work remotely, but only the people that were in the offices, admin people. We are still a hands-on company. People have to show up to build things. We have an intern program, so you could go to hudsonscenic.com and look about that. We actually recruit out of certain colleges, graduate schools and colleges that we found that the students that come out are exceptional. So we recruit out of those schools, and there's no end to the type of skill set that we need, whether it's welding, carpentry, wood, steel, aluminum, electrics, electronics. We build our own computers here for our automation system. If you have a skill set, we can use it. If you have any managerial skill, we can use it with our other company, Hudson Theatrical Associates. That company manages the shows as production managers and technical supervisors. So there are plenty of opportunities, all sorts of opportunities at Hudson. You would need to bring to the party everything Dave said. Spelling is critical. The people that read those resumes immediately discount anybody who can't write a sentence. So yes, all those things. And then when you're here, being proactive, and I'll use Donna as an example. We gave her an opportunity to run our CNC machine, and she took that, and she is now operating the computer and the machine virtually on her own at some times. And it's that kind of proactive attitude that we're looking for. We can provide many, many opportunities. People always show up and say, well, how can I grow? And I could say, just look around. There's plenty of ways to grow in this company. So that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Let me flip it around for the two people who were probably more recently looking for work and ask, was there something you wish you knew when you right out of Oneonta that you kind of wound up having to learn out in the real world in terms of looking for work?
I think that's to you and Elena, Donna.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Probably one of the more important things that I've learned is theater is a very, very small industry. I mean, you know, I can't even begin to describe how many times I've run into people that I've worked with, you know, years ago on a job, just randomly. And, you know, networking with people has gotten me more work than, you know, 1,000 applications. Just like I'm part of IATSE. I just got my card this year, but part of the process is, you know, you go down to the union hall and you sort of put yourself out there for work. And I got more work just from talking with the other members sitting in the union hall than I ever did from the hall itself. And I'm not much of a like social butterfly, so it was a very difficult thing for me to transition to. But I wish I had known that a lot sooner. I probably would have gotten my card a lot sooner if I'd known that.
It took you 5 years to get your card, right?
Yeah.
It took me 10 years.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it's not going to go much faster than what you did.
Yeah, it actually took me about 5 to 7 years as well.
Yeah.
For me, I had set up an internship right after I graduated. That ended up during the summer, and then that ended, and I was like, oh wait, I should have been looking for a job this whole time during the summer. So I like ended that internship, went home for a little bit, and my sole job was to look for a job. But to like always be planning ahead, especially if you have like short contract. I did like 3 and 4 month contracts for a couple of years. So I was like kind of perpetually always online, always on Offstage Jobs. That was kind of my go-to. There's Opera America too, if you like opera, but those generally have like higher, like production manager, higher positions. Yeah, for me it was like always being ready to go to the next job. And so I went, you know, from one job to the next, and there was no in between gap time usually. And if there was, then I just kind of like traveled around and drove around the country a little bit. Yeah, that was something I wish I was more prepared with. But it's like with doing all of these things that has happened since I graduated, it sounds like you guys are ready to go out in the world and get some jobs.
All right, so how about you all? You got questions? Someone gotta have a question. Go, Kylie.
Hi, my name is Kylie. I'm a senior this year, so I'm honestly just looking for any and all advice you have for a senior that's about to go out into the real world. Would you recommend grad school, internships, looking for a job right away? Like, what would you guys recommend?
I think that depends heavily on, you know, what you want to do in theater.
I want to be an actor, so unfortunately, I'm not super interested in the backstage, like building aspects of theater. But if you have any advice for an actor, that would be very That'd be really great.
One thing I've learned from most of my actor friends is even though you're not interested in the backstage stuff, you know, especially when you're in between like gigs, the backstage stuff is what's going to pay your bills. Like, just being versatile and being able to do other things while you're auditioning is really important. Because, you know, roles are very hard to come by. So, I mean, that's just what I've learned from some of my friends who are still out acting now.
Following up with what Donna said, so when I was in the dance world, one of the things that I emphasized to a lot of the dancers and choreographers was to learn CAD, because they could do that on their downtime, when they're injured, on their off time, and make some real money on the side when they were auditioning or injured. So that helped them. In terms of being an actor, I think the best thing is to jump into it as quickly as you can, and then decide if you want to do a grad school. Almost take a gap year. I'm a big believer in gap years. So going around auditioning is really good, if for nothing else, just to get the experience of auditioning and seeing what it's like, and seeing the other competition out there.
Are any of you, there's a scholarship up there named after Laurie Beachman. Does anybody have that scholarship in that group?
Yeah, she's not here today.
Okay, well, Laurie was an actress. She was my wife. And what I learned about acting was that you have to be willing and really brush up on your audition. So whatever you're going to do when you're ready to go for those auditions, make sure you're on mark and on point. So that would be my advice about acting or going after acting. And it's a challenge, and you know that already, though.
Thank you.
Any other? Go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Jay. I'm a junior in college now. I'm working on my wardrobe crew for some of the productions we've been doing on campus. And I was just wondering what kind of things could I do to further my, like, I don't know like how to say, but like further my experience kind of sort of like next year, especially because I'm thinking about what I do after I go to college. So kind of like on Kylie's end with like things I should do afterwards. And also like while I'm in college, like things I could take advantage of. So I'm better equipped for going out into the real world.
Can we stop for a second and never use that term again? Because I have no idea what the real world is. So stop referring to it as if there's something out there that makes sense, because nothing out here makes sense. And if you want to,
most of us are in this business because we don't want to join that world.
yeah, and we're assuming you don't either, since you're in Mask and Hammer and theater programs and all those things. But the real world is not a place that anybody wants to live, is my guess, right? Right, Dave?
100%.
Yeah.
So, you know, at this point, I would try and find some costume designers and start dialoguing with them. Just like you're talking to us, you know, we're all working in our fields. Look online, look at shows, look in playbills, find other costume designers that you're interested in. You know, see if you can track them down, ask them what they're working on, see if you can, you know, in one of your breaks, maybe take a day off and come down and follow them around, see what's going on. I've had many a student just sort of show up with coffee. I had one student who showed up with coffee and stayed with me for 12 years. He ended up becoming a head electrician for me often. But you have to be very proactive. No one's coming to you.
And when you go, if you have a portfolio, if you have some sketches or you have something you've done, make sure you have it in your pocket so that you can say, oh, let me show you what I'm doing and comment on it. You're not going to walk in and ask for a job. What you're doing is walking in and telling them that they're interesting, that they're important. And that's why you're there. And you're looking for some feedback on what to do next. And you may end up, like Dave says, you may end up walking out with a job. But yeah, start introducing yourself. There's a lot of things you can read and see who's doing a show, especially if they're going to go to New York. We're starting to get busy again. If this were a year ago, I would have no advice on how to get a job because there was no theater a year ago. But now we're starting to get busy again. The off-Broadway and off-Broadway shows are starting to do things. Get yourself some newspapers and magazines and start finding out who's doing stuff and head south if that's what you want to do. I mean, there's theater everywhere. I mean, you could go to Chautauqua and find theater. You go to Buffalo. Syracuse has Syracuse Stage. All those places are doing shows.
Yeah, down the road in Albany, the opera's right down there in Cooperstown. You got plenty of opportunity near you.
Thank you.
One thing that I've noticed at Arizona Opera, there was like a specialty need for a painter dyer. If that's anything you're interested in, and I don't know how it is, but like our painter dyer was put to work, and she did distressing also, was an apprentice here, and then moved up over the past couple of years and was our like head painter dyer. She also does other things too, but like I know very little about costume shops, but like having a specialty might benefit you. I mean, it'll like also, you can't take every job, but like here there was a need for a painter dyer. Also, we have a really great costume shop apprentice program that happens every year. And I think it's usually like 1 or 2 year apprenticeship. She likes to like keep people for longer if they're good, if they want to stick around. Additionally, for props, there's like at least 2 Facebook groups of like props people. New York based. Well, one's New York City based, one's like nationwide based. I'm sure there's something like that for costumers also. And it's like, it's kind of a forum also for us, like, hey, do you know where I can find this like really weird specific thing? Or I'm doing the show. Has anybody made this prop before? How did you do it? So it's kind of cool to have like a dialogue there that I'm sure costumers also have out there in the online world.
One of the things I can't recommend enough, especially while you're still in college, is summer stock. Sorry, that was weird feedback. Oh, there it is. Okay. Summer stock is a really great way to get experience and to build up your resume, especially while you're still in school, so that you aren't just putting education based stuff on your resume. Offstage Jobs has already been mentioned, but it's one of the best places to find summer stock opportunities. And when I was a junior going into my senior year, that's the 1 year I did summer stock, because I was lucky enough to start working at Hudson right after I graduated. But that summer stock experience is really what propelled me further into being a carpenter to be able to come to Hudson. So summer stock is definitely a very important stepping stone, especially while you're still in school.
And just a side note, the places that are the most reputable places and the most desirable summer stock gigs are hiring now. So if you're looking to do that, and I just like everyone here, I strongly encourage that you do. Now is the time to get those applications in to find out what's there. Because if you wait until March or April, all the best gigs will be gone and you'll be left with the ones that don't have stipends, don't cover housing, treat you like dirt. And those are not the positions that I want you guys to have. So start looking now.
Thank you.
More questions? Go ahead, Julian.
So I'm Julian, I'm a junior. This is, sorry. I think this question, I guess, is for the Alanna and Donna, because you're the graduates. Do you have like a memory from Oneonta, doing theater in Oneonta, that you, like a favorite memory that you had during your time in Oneonta?
Did you hear that all right?
No.
Could you repeat it, please?
It was a question. Do you have a favorite memory of your time here in Oneonta? Was there more to that?
Doing theater.
doing theater specifically?
For one that like popped in my head, not necessarily a favorite memory, but it was with you, Scott. In doing like when we were programming my lights.
Is this for Terp Space?
Yeah, I was like standing up, like you're next to me programming, and I'm telling you what to do, but like I must have been so stressed. My like teeth after I was done, my jaw was so sore because I think I must have been like clenching my teeth the whole time. Like, oh my God, like why was that so hard for me? Maybe I could have been a little bit more prepared.
I understand the clenched jaw when talking to Scott as well.
I am a pussycat.
But I guess like big picture, it was always hanging out on the bridge and seeing like everybody walk past. Like I'm not generally a social person. I'm more, not too outgoing. So like I could sit there and like kind of wait for people to come and then be hanging out with people. That was always fun when I had downtime or like between classes or something, just to like see my friends. Yeah.
It's a thing that will have to reintroduce itself because it's been, with COVID and all that, people are less out there and gathering kind of in random places inside right now. So I'm sure that is a thing that will return. But
There's like little to no seating on the bridge anymore.
yeah, it's been a little,
There's no
it's
sit.
quiet in fine arts these days, but
It's so sad.
we'll get there.
Very sad. I agree. The bridge memories are some of the best. But one particular memory that pops into my head often, my senior semester, I did my one and only fully realized scenic design was the student production of Rabbit Hole. And I only had roughly 10 days to get everything in after the staff production was finished. And I remember painting the floor only hours before opening night, and Scott walked in and like just looked at me and goes, "This isn't gonna get done on time." And just out of like complete and total determination, I was like, it sure is. And I just sat there for another 2 hours and finished the floor just in time for it to dry before the curtains went up. And it's just one of the memories I remember most often.
Which is not what the time frame we encourage to happen, but I don't think that question needs to be limited to just our most recent grads. Dave, what are some of your happiest?
Yeah, well, one of the problems is my memory is shot. So, we had it was a great time. The professors that were there were so giving. So I remember spending hours and hours in the office, just picking all the professors' brains, getting feedback. Dr. Miller, was an incredible, person who had a history that every single time we sat down with him, there was, well, when I was in vaudeville, or, when I was hanging, with King Kong during the filming of, it was great. And it was also inspiring. The professors we had were very inspiring. Dr. Kotke was sort of my mentor at the time. And he and I spent a lot of time talking about light and lighting and his experiences. But the main thing for me, I think, is to this day is the friends that I met at Oneonta, and that we're still such a tight group. And, I don't know what the bridge is, but, we used to hang out back in the scene shop. That's where we hung out. There wasn't any other great places to hang out except in the quad. We hung out in the quad and Fitzell Hall for coffee.
Since I did just one show, I mean, I could say that was really experienced, but like I told you, it was a turbulent time. I did learn how to do the song, "They Say That Falling in Love Is Wonderful," to pantomime. We did that backstage during that one number at Annie Get Your Gun. But with Dave, I mean, Fred Miller was a killer. had the best line. He ran away from the circus and joined a town. So
Favorite line.
that was my favorite from him. But what was great were the faculty and the classes. Like I said, I was a lit major. I remember one day a visiting guest was Michael Smith. Now, Michael Smith was the leading theater critic for the Village Voice. If you could ever get that book on the theater critics of the Village Voice, it was the main newspaper back in the late 60s, early 70s that would chronicle what was an enormously great time in theater. The history of off-Broadway, whether it was Judson Church or whether it was the Performing Garage or La Mama or the WPA, all of those were incredible places to do theater. I mean, when you look back at it, to be able to say you were part of that original team that did the Slave Ship, an incredible time off-Broadway. And Michael was the critic of that time. And he came up to Oneonta to visit with us. And when I got to off-Broadway, I realized just how important he was. Everybody that was doing a show would hope that Michael Smith would show up as opposed to John Law or one of the other critics of the time. So Oneonta provided that opportunity. And then, you go forward with that. I'm sure you're getting the same opportunities now through your faculty, et cetera.
They're at least gonna say yes right now because I'm sitting right here, so.
Oh, they're talking about you, the other.
Oh,
The other
oh.
faculty.
I get it. Any other questions? I'll keep feeding them. So I'm kind of curious how all of you have been kind of affected by, I guess, professionally by the pandemic and what it's looking like now that we're hopefully, as people are getting more and more vaccinated, hopefully starting to come out of it, how things are starting to look for all y'all, as they say down in the South.
There was actually an article in last Sunday's Washington Post about us and what we're doing post, opening. Our two companies are responsible to help open 27 productions, 5 Hamiltons, 3 Aladdins, shows in Holland, Paris, Mexico City, as well as what we have to do on Broadway and on the road. So they totaled up to 27 shows. We're on our last one right now, a new production called Mrs. Doubtfire. But when the pandemic hit a year ago, March, we shut down for 15 weeks. And then we shut down in March and reopened in July. And our operation was at 25% for the year of 2020. And for the first half of this year, it was at 50%. And now we're about up to 80%. So it's been a long road back over the last 20 months.
So my company was unique in that when the pandemic hit, all of our live stuff shut down. All the rock and roll tours shut down, all the theater shut down, a lot of the big TV studios shut down. But we were asked to build remote control studios that people could do from their homes. So back in the 90s, I was involved in building these little flash studios for corporate. And we would go to large corporations and build tiny little studios in their offices with a camera, a couple of lights, and a little background. So CEOs didn't have to leave their buildings. They could just walk into this room, flip the camera on, put the mic on, and they could connect to CNN, MSNBC, all these studios. So when the pandemic hit, we immediately got calls from a lot of people saying, hey, remember you used to do those flash studios? Can you do one in our basement? And can you do one in my attic? Can you do it in the garage? So we immediately started figuring out how to gather equipment, which was the hardest thing, is getting gear. And then we started building lots and lots of these remote locations, also remote controlled lighting systems that my programmers could control basically off their laptops using something known, we use specifically the Ion dongle by ETC, which is basically a little thumb drive you stick in your computer, and through the internet, you can access lighting and sound and things like that. So we were fairly busy. Now we're sort of leveling off with things coming back. Our shows are coming back into TV studios. Our rock and roll is going back out. I was also heavily involved during the pandemic with the NBA. I'm the NBA court lighting designer. So I was in the bubble for a while. We did that. And now that things are opening up in stadiums again, we're going back and we're going to have an all-star game this year, it looks like, in Indianapolis. So things are, I don't have a number, but things feel better and are certainly opening up. It's interesting, though, the pressure we're getting to do with less people, which is a little disconcerting. I'm not too pleased about the pressure we're getting about having less crew and having less people to do the same jobs that we used to do. So it's an interesting time on that end. People are certainly aware of COVID. We have COVID monitors on every set, in every theater, and every studio, making sure that people are doing the right things. So it is definitely a different time in theater. And I'm not sure how it goes back 100% to the way it was.
Arizona Opera, we got the call the one day, it was like noon, saying, hey, maybe we left at noon, left the shop, like kind of like dropped our stuff, left. I attempted to work from home for a month, which is a little hard, but I was like, okay, I have some like computer, like organization things that I can do. About like a month, maybe like 2 months after that, we got we also had to cancel our last show. We do rentals. So our set was already here in Arizona. Like, I don't know, we were like very close to moving into theater. They were in rehearsals already. So we had to like send that show back. We got a loan, one of the PPP loan grant things. So I was luckily able to stay employed, which I'm super grateful because I know so many friends that were furloughed and laid off, but I was able to come into work. There was very little to do at work. I did a lot of organizing and reorganizing and cleaning to keep myself busy. Then in that January, so I was like that for a couple months. And then like November-ish, I started prepping for a show we were gonna do. So I think it was gonna be like the first show of that next season was gonna be a brand new opera set in Bisbee, Arizona. So I was like, things got pushed. January was going to be the start of the film date. We decided to make this opera into a film that we were going to do in our black box space. So like November, December, prepping all the props for that. And then like ready to go, everything's ready for rehearsal. And then they say, wait, hold on, like COVID's really bad right now. We don't feel comfortable. We're going to push it to April, May. So then I'd done all of the work that I had to do. And so then I was like also back to like finding things to do around the shop. And then end of April, beginning of May, we started filming our opera in our black box space. It was a unit set, but then it kind of like wrapped around the corner, so a little bit, but mostly like three shot points. And that was wild to do a film. None of us have really ever done film before. So that was like, everything had to be kind of perfect because we didn't know what kind of like close-up shots there were going to be. Everything had to be perfect. The costume shop had to like make sure all the stitching was great. You know, everything had to be perfect for everyone. Yeah, that was a lot for everyone. And luckily at that time, it felt like a little bit safer. And then then the summertime came and we slowed down during the summer anyway. But we are ready to go into rehearsal for our next show in like 2 weeks. Start rehearsals. So we are like back heading into the theater, gonna do live shows again. We have our like COVID protocols set up. But we are excited to be back in the theater doing live theater. If anyone's interested, our opera, it's called Copper Queen, and it's streaming. I think it's streaming for a couple more days, but you have to pay money for it. But it's kind of cool. And for just like sidetrack for a sec, I didn't like opera when I started doing theater. It's not that different when you break it all down. Like props are like still kind of the same. Musical theater is like probably, I would say, harder to do than opera. An example I like to give is like you're a waiter and you have like champagne glasses on your tray, but you also have to like dance around, hop on furniture, and the champagne glasses can't fall off. So, you know, like you have to put your hand underneath like a hook so the tray doesn't fall off and magnetize the glasses to the tray. Opera, sometimes they can be glass, not always preferred, but like you don't need all of the like special, not always people are like jumping on chairs in opera. But they're different and similar at the same time. So if an opera opportunity comes up for you, don't be afraid of it. It's different, but not that different.
My COVID theatrical experience is sort of a mixed bag. At first, everything was, extremely scary, unsettling. Being in the shop when Broadway announced that they were going to be closing was a very weird, uneasy time. I've never felt anything like that, and none of my coworkers had before. And then, when Neil held our shop meeting to let us know that Hudson was going to be closing as well was, especially scary because no one knew how long it would be. And as the months dragged on and extensions continued, the feeling of unease didn't get any better. But I was fortunate enough to come back to Hudson last September to get the tours that we had sort of left in March finished and out the door. I was working on Hamilton at the time. And then I was laid off until like December. And then because of my programming experience with the CNC, our head CNC operator, Adam, had to stay home with his children because they weren't in school. So they called me back to run the machine for roughly 4 months while he was out. And so that was a really good, opportunity for me just to get better with my skills on the machine and programming, because it had been so long since I had done it, almost 9 months in between, which is a long time to not run a machine. And, just having those skills made it so that I could work at a time when almost no one else was. And then there was a little downtime after that. And then I have been back at Hudson since April of this year. And I have not seen any lack of work, at least for myself, which is unusual just in general, because usually there's lulls in some work, like in July, normally we see some kind of lull. So it's been an odd year in that sort of way, but a good year, at least like for Hudson and for us here. I'm very grateful for the fact that we have been able to be back at work and back at a higher capacity.
So are there things that wound up getting put in place because of COVID, or things that each of you kind of learned or adopted that you think will carry on past post-pandemic life?
I'll
Well,
jump in here. So I have two things I can talk about. One is the remote control aspect. So I'm actually lighting shows from my studio office. Cameras get sent back to me in my office, and I have a programmer on location, so there's less people in studios, which is kind of an interesting thing. So I don't have to leave the studio to go to other studio, to my studio, to go to television studios as much, which is a little weird. I miss the connection with other people, but I think there's going to be more of this sort of remote control world. The other thing that came out of this was, and I'm going to send the link, I'll send the link to you guys, Equity Through Design Mentorship. So this was formed through USA 829 Design and a bunch of other designers, Broadway, off-Broadway, television, opera. And we hooked up with a bunch of different colleges and schools, high schools as well. And we all took students and mentored them during this time when they didn't have access to schools. And we're continuing it. We're just starting our second session. And it's an interesting program where it's one-on-one with a designer, yet they still have their classes. And in fact, on Saturdays, we're doing workshops every Saturday through, I think, April. And anybody can join in on those over Zoom. So I will send you the link to that as well. If you're interested, you can log on and just listen and participate.
Thank you.
Any other COVID-related practices you think will carry through?
I mean, in 50 years, I've gone through, I don't know how many recessions, 9/11, complete financial collapse in 2008. And then to have the pandemic hit was like just one more test. Like, can you resolve and keep going and stay open through that one? So we did. I can't imagine what other tests this company is going to take over the next few years. But I guess what it did was taught us how to keep going. So maybe that's what we got out of this. The
Neil, thank you
resilience
for
to
not
keep
using-
going.
Thanks for not using the word pivot.
What's that?
I said, Neil, thank you for not using the word pivot. That's my pet peeve word.
What does that word even mean?
That's what I'm still trying to figure out, but it seems like everybody uses it in every sentence. I think the year before that, the word was unpack.
You know what, Dave, I don't know any of this stuff. And you know how Elena was talking about how you could go online and be part of a group and prop people all. I don't have Facebook. I don't have any of that stuff.
You got to hire younger assistants.
I do. I have hired all of them. They have all that
That's
stuff.
key.
They keep me current.
Exactly.
Apparently, my company has an Instagram account, which I don't have access to because I don't have Instagram. But I hear it's a very nice Instagram account, so you guys can join it and then let me know. Is it good, Donna?
Yeah, I think Frank does a really good job of curating it.
Great. See, Dave?
You've done well.
Yeah.
Any other questions from our current students? Panel, any closing thoughts, words of wisdom, witticisms that you'd like to share with those who are?
I'm just going to give
breaking
one
in?
perspective because I know what's on your mind. You all want to know how you're going to get a job. I'm not a big one for a conversation on career path. I don't really follow that line of thinking. But I will tell you this, when you get out, get a job, do it well, and it'll lead to the next job. And soon it's going to lead to the job you really want, and you'll be ready to do that. So when people asked me about this the past 2 years, when there was no theater, I told them to take any job, pay the rent, put food on the table, and then when theater reopened, you'd be ready. Just get a job, if hopefully in theater, and it'll lead to something else. Do it well, and it'll keep leading to the next one.
For me, I think absolutely doing summer work, doing summer theater between your years in college. I'm also a very curious person, so I'd like go over to the next person next to me, like another artisan or master artisan, like, what are you doing? How did you do that? And like learning from your peers in your shop or your friends, I think was beneficial versus like, I have my project, I'm gonna do my thing. Seeing what everybody else is doing and asking questions, yeah, is helpful.
One of the worst things I found that you can do is if you're unsure about something, even if you're afraid to ask the question, asking the question is always the right choice. Because if you do something half-cocked and you do it wrong, generally speaking, that's going to land you either out of a job or in a much worse position than you would have been if you just asked. Pretty much anybody, especially in theater, is happy to help you, figure something out if you don't understand it. And that's something that I learned pretty quickly at Hudson. Anything that I didn't know, one of my coworkers was always right there and ready to help me learn and figure it out and, do it the right way rather than having to do it again or present an incorrect product. And that's something that you should always make sure that you do, is just ask the question, even if you're afraid to ask it.
Absolutely. Ask a question and listen to the answer. Be kind to people and, show up on time. 5 minutes early is on time. Do not show up late. Being on time is a huge plus. Talk to other people and ask them questions about their career path. Find out what they're doing. Because if you get to know somebody, there's a chance that they'll say, hey, I got this guy or this woman who I just worked with. Let me call them, see if they're available. So be nice. And most importantly, be really careful training down the cow path.
All right, well, that's just about it. Michelle, do you have any closing words from alumni engagement?
No, nothing as eloquent as these four, but just another big thank you for joining us today virtually. Especially Elena, it's nice to have you from across the way because I know we normally go down to New York City, but I think this opens doors globally. So thank you everybody, and I hope you have a good night.
Thank you, and good luck to all of you.
Nice to
Thank you
see
so
you.
much.
Bye now. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.